Okay, how's it going, everybody? It's me again, Gongzhou from CGTN, live in China's National Conference Center. And this time we're going to report to you something big, something interesting. It's called the CSS. You can see clearly it's about cyber security. So about the cybersecurity conference, there's a lot of things to talk about because there are big people coming here in this conference center to discuss things about, how to prevent people from getting hacked. Okay, the word CSS to me as a semi-pro web developer, CSS can mean a completely different thing. It's a language that to get the web pages stylized. So that's an interesting coincidence, I think. And this conference is held by Tencent. Tencent is one of the China's best, the largest companies, internet companies in China, and it is now making a lot of progresses in things like news, like website, and they have a famous app called WeChat. It is the WhatsApp in China, so it is a very big company. Also, if you're a game player, you play League of Legends. League of Legends is owned by Tencent, so it's a really big company. Having dived into many fields of the internet. So Tencent holding this conference. This is the third time for Tencent to hold this conference, and they have already matured mechanism for people to discuss cybersecurity things. And we have been here since early in the morning and to listen to all those guys talking about the safety things. And they keep mentioning three things. The first one is ransomware, WannaCry, things like that. WannaCry is the major hacking event of the year in the previous year. So obviously people all want to talk about that thing, WannaCry, to attract people's attention. That is normal. And the second thing is about law. China has recently published a cybersecurity law. It is the first one in this country, and it went into effect in June the 1st. So that is quite new to everyone in the internet industry in China. So people are desperate to know what the law is talking about and what should we do and what should we not to do according to the law. The third one is interesting. It's the first time for me to hear such things. Collaboration. Maybe time has passed for one single company to keep itself contained in the internet world. So those big companies are now calling each other to put themselves together into a union, collaboration, to form a collaboration to fight against those evil hackers. Well, talking about hackers, there are three types of hackers. The first one is the hackers we know, that doing bad things, the black hat hackers. And there are also white hat hackers. White hat hackers prevent people from being damaged by hacking events. And there are also a third type that's standing in the middle, called gray hat hackers. Well, today most people here, I believe, are white hat hackers. They want to prevent you from being hacked, being the victim of the hacking events. So in the morning, there are big people talking about there's a okay, let's talk about that later. I have my media pass now. I have to use this card to get into the conference room. Okay, all the way through. And there's a hall here. Tencent is showing off its ability in the web security, in the cybersecurity world. Well, that's just a bit of show off. So we don't want to dive deep into it. And now you can see that on the screen that there are somebody already talking about things. And I think it is a Chinese guy from Tencent. And there are a big guy coming here. Next to him, maybe starting in like 10 minutes, there will be someone called Kevin Mitnick. If you're interested in web tech or security things, I think you may heard of this 54-year-old guy. He used to be very controversial in the hacker world because he was put into jail for 5 years in 1995 because he likely hacked something. But that event is very controversial. We don't want to dive deep into it because it's I don't really know if he's actually did any crime. So, but now he is on the stage. I can see on the screen he is on the stage right now. He was acclaimed as a legendary hacker in the people around me. So maybe you want to check out what he has to say. Okay, now let's get into the room and see him on the stage.
而且按照他的讲法，我觉得呢，可能未来的企业招聘中，或者说呢，我们说最佳雇主啊，最有发展前景的企业，可能又多了一个衡量的尺度，就是看这个企业的漏洞啊打的漏洞打的及时不及时。
As the host,
这是刚才董先生的演讲。那么下面呢，我们就把我要把这个主持
they're welcoming the VIP in today's
国
conference.
内外知名的一位黑客，他就
I
是
will
腾
try to
讯的
get
玄武
as
实验室的负
close
责人
as
李
possible.
阳先生，有请李阳。
I will try to get. Okay, it seems like we have a change of the plan. Now there's still someone from Tencent to making some introductions.
大家好，
maybe
我
there's
是
a
李
change
阳
of，
来
plan.
自腾讯安全玄武实验室。
This guy is called Yu Yang.
那么我
He's
加
from
入到
one
安
of the
全
best
这个行业
security lab in
15年的
Tencent.
历史呢，今年是正好我
Okay, maybe you can hear something
干这
from
行第
him.
15年。所以
And
在
by the time I will continue
有
to
些场
tell
合
you,
就是
okay,
面对一些这个小朋友
by
们
the
的时候
time
呢
I will
有时候
tell
我
you
会
something more
就假
about
装一些这个
this
假装
conference.
老前辈啊。
Okay, just now we mentioned 3 topics:
但是呢，
the ransomware, the
今天
law,
我
and
在
the
这
collaboration.
里呢，
And there are more things coming.
我
You
要向大家介绍一
there
位
are
真
already
正的老
there
前
already
辈。
have been
就是
some
即使
guys
是
that
我
talked
见到
about
他，
really
那
great
么我也
things. There's a people from Kapasky,
我
you know,
年轻的时候
the
是
lab
追随着
that
你的步
researches
伐加入了这个
the
行业。
lab that researches
那么他是谁呢？
the viruses.
大家说，大家
Okay, it seems like Yu Yang is introducing Kevin.
OK 好。
People are shouting
已
his
经有
name.
朋友猜出来了。好，那么接下来我们有请凯文·米克
Okay, I
尼克。
think I'll just fade away because the big guy is coming. You know, Kevin David Mitnick. The Chinese on the screen says he is the best legendary hacker in the world, and he is now a consultant
凯文呢还
to
需
the
要准备一段
FBI.
时间。
It seems like he has brought out a
对于凯文
computer.
呢，
It seems like he's going to
来参加今
demonstrate
天
us
咱们这
how
个
to
会议的
hack
人，可
things.
能基本上不需要介绍了，基本上不需要介绍了。
Okay. The host says it's not really necessary to introduce Kevin to the people in this place.
他曾经是上过 FBI 的通缉名单，是吧？
Okay,
但是呢，可能大家不知道，他现在也是 FBI 的顾问。
he used to be chased by FBI, but
另外
now
呢，
become a consultant. You know, it's like he's turning himself from a black hat hacker into a white hat one. So that sounds really cool, huh? Maybe we really need to know what he has to say because he's the VIP of this conference and everyone's waiting. You can hear that everyone shouted his name just now to welcome him. And now he is already on the stage doing preparation.
另外呢，现在他同时还有一重身份，就是安全咨询顾问。那么他
Okay, the previous one, the previous people that has already made introduction, including Vladimir Dashchenko from Kapasky, you know, Kapasky, the Russian antivirus software, and there's Leon Ritchie, the chief security officer at Visa, you know, the credit card company. So there are really big people here, and now the biggest is on the stage and getting ready to start. It seems like he's okay. It seems like he's ready.
另外我还有一个消息可能要告诉大家，就是以凯文
he said
的故
there's
事
one
为
more
蓝
thing
本
to disclose.
而拍摄的电影叫做
A
《您瞧
movie
网络
based
世
on
界的幻
Heaven's
想》。
Heaven's
已经
life
在去年上
experiences
映，大家如果
was
感
put
兴
on
趣的话，可以
stage
去找一找相关的
last
信
year.
息。
So maybe we can find something on the internet to check out what Kevin has done in his life.
那么今
He
天呢，
was
我们
once
请
put
凯文
into
到这里
prison
来
for 5
一方
years
面
because of
呢
hacking, as we have
因
introduced
为我
just
刚才
now.
的介绍呢，还是从我了解的一些信息。 那么我们希望由他本人向
Now
我们
we
讲
are
一下，
standing at
就
the
是
China's
更猛的一些料，
National
就是我们
Conference
大家以
Center
前不知道的东
in
西。另
Beijing
外呢，
to
还将
report to
其
you
他
live
向我们
about
去展示一
Kevin's
些
show
信息安全上面
of
非
how
常
to
非常
hack
突破的
things.
技术。大家看到了，这个设备已经摆好了。
And Kevin Mitnick, one-on-one with the
那么
legend. The title is
让
very
我们再
interesting.
次以热
One-on-one
烈的
with the
掌声欢
legend.
迎凯文·密特尼克。
Okay, the shows begin. I will just fade away. We can just hear what he
It's
has
great
to
to be
say.
here. My first time in Beijing, so it's fantastic to be here and meet everybody here at the CSS conference. So I'm honored to be here the first time in Beijing for all of you.
腾讯也非常荣幸能够请到凯文·密特尼克到这里来。
It seems like Kevin's first trip to
首先
China.
凯文，我想先向你
That's
提一个问
fantastic.
题。那么在向我们展示这些很酷的事情之前，那么
He's still,
告诉我们
he is interacting with the host.
是如何开始的吗？
So Kevin, before we dive into really cool things you're going to show us today, how do you actually get started then?
Okay, how did I get started in hacking? When I was a young kid, about 10 years old, I was fascinated with magic, and I'd ride my bicycle to the magic store after school and on weekends, so I could see the guys behind the counter performing magic tricks because I always wanted to learn the secret. So when I ended up in high school, I met this kid who could work magic with the telephone system. He was what they call a phone phreaker. That was kind of the predecessor to computer hacking, was phone phreaking. And he showed me the magic he could do. For example, he had a number he could call, and he'd put in a secret code and could dial anywhere in the world for free, which I thought was cool. Much later, I figured out there was probably some poor company's MSCI account, but I had no idea at the time. I also was shown a trick where I can call on one number, he can call on the other, and we'd be magically joined. So I kind of, was amazed with all the stuff this kid could do with the phone system. And if you remember, Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs, back in the mid-1970s, Woz read an article in the 1971 issue of Esquire magazine about the secrets of the little blue box. And Wozniak built the blue box, and then Jobs had the idea of selling the blue box on Berkeley's campus. And from the money they made from selling these blue boxes, they bought the components to build the first Apple I. But I went in a slightly different direction because I was a prankster. So with my phone phreaking skills, I used to do things like hack into the phone company, modify my friend's home service in the phone company switch, and change it to a payphone. So whenever my friend tried to make a call, or his parents did, it would say, please deposit 25 cents. So I used to do all these sort of pranks. So another student in high school asked me, maybe you'd be interested in taking a computer class. And at the time, I actually had no interest in computers. It was all telephone systems. So he ended up introducing me to a computer science instructor, and he started asking the instructor, what grade are you in? Are you a senior? I was in 11th grade at the time. Did I have calculus? Did I have physics? He was asking me about my prerequisite coursework in high school. And my friend said, oh, show Mr. Christ what you could do with the phone. So I started showing him all these tricks, but I didn't have the prerequisites to take a computer class. And this guy was the computer science instructor. But after I showed him all the tricks I could do with the phone, he waived the prerequisites and allowed me in the class. And he probably regrets that decision today. So the first assignment he gave the class was to write a Fortran program to find the first 100 Fibonacci numbers. And as a high school kid, I was disinterested. It was too easy and boring. So I thought I'd write a cooler program. And let me take you back when I was in high school, because it's probably before some of your time. We had an Olivetti 110-baud terminal, an acoustic coupler modem, and how we used to dial up to the school system. It was a PDP 1170 running an operating system called Ristas, developed by DEC. So how people would connect to the system, they dial up and put the handset in the acoustic coupler modem. What I noticed is the student and the instructor used the same computer, and whenever somebody logged out and log back in. They never hung up the phone. They always used the same connection. So I thought I could write a cooler program. Rather than a program to find the 100 Fibonacci numbers, I wrote a program to steal the teacher's password, which I thought was really cool, right? And all it was a login simulator. So rather than when the teacher went in to sign in, rather than talking to the operating system, it was actually running my code, which pretended to be the operating system. It accepted his username, his password, and then it logged him in, but also stored his credentials where I could pick them up somewhere else.
Oh, that sounds
So it came time to turn in the assignment. So the instructor was walking around the class. Other students were handing in their Fibonacci assignments. And when he came to my desk, I had nothing. And he goes, "Where's your assignment?" And I go, "I don't have it."
Oh.
He goes, "I stuck my neck out, allowed you into class, and you're not even doing the schoolwork." And I said, "But I wrote a cooler program." He goes, "What program?" I go, "Isn't your password Johnco?" J-O-H-N-C-O is the instructor's password. And he looked shocked, and he goes, "How did you get my password?" And I gave him the code that was essentially this login simulator to steal his password. And rather than be angry, he got a huge smile on his face, wrote the source code of the program up on the board so everyone else could see it, and he gave me a bunch of attaboys. So this was the ethics taught to young Kevin Mitnick that it was cool to hack. So that's how I got started.
It's cool to hack. Yeah.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
Everyone in CGTN Tech
大家
believes
听
in
出来了
that
吧？
too.
这个就是也是一个熊孩子是吧？
Yeah, just yet another naughty boy.
凯文，我想再问一个问题，就是在你
Another
以
question.
前从事过的这些黑客行动当中，
In your previous
最
hacking
喜欢的一次是
trials,
哪一次？
is there any
So what
favorite?
was your favorite hack
Okay,
so
there
far?
is a translator.
My favorite hack was actually when I was a teenager, and it was into McDonald's.
McDonald's.
But it wasn't for a
Oh.
free Big Mac. Not only was I involved in phone phreaking and hacking, but I was also involved in amateur radio, which is more like advanced citizens band radio. And in the United States, I don't know about here in China, we have drive-up windows for McDonald's. So I worked out how I could remotely take over the drive-up window, so when a customer would drive up, rather than getting the guy inside the McDonald's with the headset, he would get me. Right? So you can imagine how much fun you can have when you're 16. So people would drive in, I'd say, "Hey, can I take your order?" They'd give me their order. And then I'd say, "Hey, you're the 100th customer today. Please drive forward. Your order's absolutely free." Other people would drive
That sounds more naughty.
And as you know, in the United States, we eat a lot, right? So somebody would drive up, they'd place their typical orders, Big Macs, fries, quarter pounders, apple pies, and all the junk food they could order. And then I would say, based on the make and model of your vehicle and the number of occupants, I actually suggest you change the order to the McSalad, right? And my favorite was when the cops would drive up. Because police all the time drive up to place orders at McDonald's. And I'd go, "Hide the cocaine! Hide the cocaine!" And of course, the manager of the McDonald's runs outside into the parking lot. He's looking, in the cars, he's looking around the area to see who's messing with the system. But of course, he didn't see me. And then the guy walks up to the drive-up window speaker, bends over and peers inside as if somebody's hiding in the speaker. So of course I couldn't resist. I go, "What the hell are you looking at?" And the guy flies back about 10 feet. So I don't know if you do these pranks in China, but in the United States, as a 16-year-old, this was kind of, hilarious at the time. So that hands down
That's
is my
hilarious to
favorite
a 30-year-old
hack of all
me.
我刚才这个料感觉已经有点意思了，但是呢，我接下来我想问一个更加敏感的问题。
Now it comes to the more sensitive questions.
但是看看凯文会怎么接这个问题。
I want the show, I don't want the questions. Although the questions are kind of interesting.
单独监禁。我想知道这是为什
Okay,
么？
now the prison thing.
So the U.S. government put you in solitary confinement in the prison before. Why was that?
Well, I was doing a lot of hacking. Now, hacking not for money or to cause damage, but it was more for intellectual curiosity, pursuit of knowledge and seduction of adventure. Because I started hacking when I was in high school, and there weren't even laws against it at the time. This was in the late 1970s. The first law was in 1984. And when I was arrested, this was around the times, a little bit after the time of a movie called War Games. And I was in federal court. A United States prosecutor stands up before a judge and says, not only do we have to hold Mr. Mitnick in prison because he's such a grave danger to national security, we have to make sure he can't get access to the phone. So the judge confused and goes, what do you mean, Mr. Prosecutor? Why do we have to make sure you can't give him access to the phone? In jail. And the prosecutor went on to say, if we allow Mr. Mitnick access to a phone, he could dial up to NORAD, that's our Northern Air Defense, dial up to the modem, whistle into the phone, communicate with the modem, and launch an ICBM warhead. Like, what? You know, so the prosecutor said I could whistle the launch codes and start World War III. So the judge, of course, I started laughing in open court, but the judge wasn't laughing, and the judge actually believed the government. So I was held in solitary confinement in the United States federal prison for about a year, based on the myth that I could whistle the launch codes. So I'm still practicing.
I wish I could whistle the launch codes.
那你现在还在做黑客吗？
So do you still hack right now, from time to time?
There's a lot of witnesses in the audience.
Yeah.
No, I do. No, so it's kind of interesting because nowadays I get to hack, and it's legal, and I actually do it for a living. So I run the company that we do red teaming. So basically, what's red teaming
because there's already computers on stage.
Penetration testers and companies from around the world pay us to compromise their systems physically, technically, through social
Personally, I
experience,
think they're just
wireless
hyping,
networks, SCADA networks,
just telling people
and this
how
sort of thing.
great
So
a
it's kind of like
legend
Pablo Escobar
Mitnick
becoming a
is.
pharmacist, right? So I still get to hack. I love it. I have a passion for it. I've been doing this pretty much all my life, and it's really fortunate that today I can actually do it legitimately, because back when I started this in the 70s and 80s, there was no such thing as pen testing. Some of the larger companies had their own IT people, they managed the security, and there was no such thing as going to outside companies. But after the internet became popular, now, you know, security is a #1 concern of the business. So now it makes opportunities for, you know, companies that do penetration testing. So it's actually a fantastic thing, and it's very rewarding as well.
这就是为什么就是我们刚才讲的，从这个 FBI 悬赏的这样一个名单上面，然后现在变成了 FBI 的这样一个顾问，啊，仍然是在做黑客，但是可能做的事情是完全不一样的。
Okay, I hope they process to the
我有一个
hacking
事情
now,
很好奇，就是从
but
一
there's
些报
still
道来看，
questions
就
going
说
on.
您的这个安全团队去做测试的时候，成功率可以达到100%。 但是100%这个数字真的很让人吃惊，所以，因为我们在现场有来自很多大公司的朋友，您的意思是您可以把这些大公司的系统全部都能够入侵成功吗？这是怎么实现的？
It's reported that your security team can get in 100% of like every time. But we have a lot of like major companies right here. So can you tell us how did you do that? Is it really possible? 100% success rate?
It's qualified, so we do have a 100% success rate on clients from globally around the world when the client allows us to use social engineering.
Now he's making ads about
himself. Social engineering is where we can use manipulation, deception, and influence to convince a target that works inside the company to comply with our request, to release information, to let us into the office, to open up an attachment or click on a hyperlink. It's basically when we're able to use the social engineering method of hacking, which we all know was used successfully very recently against Hillary Clinton's campaign, right? John Podesta was the victim of a social engineering attack, and that's how they compromised his emails and sent them over to Julian Assange at WikiLeaks. It's one of the attack vectors that's extremely easy for an attacker to exploit, but very difficult for companies to protect themselves against, because all it takes is one person inside the business to fall for it, and all the money that that business spent on security is essentially wasted, because the attacker is still able to compromise the network, and from that point, they could pivot off somebody's system inside the company that fell for the attack, and then attack other systems within that organization. Yeah. Yeah.
最后还有一个问题。
Okay, one last question. Thank God.
之前有一些朋友想托我来问你的一个问题，就是我们知道，像在最近的这个美国和法国的大选当中，都据报道说也会出现了一些黑客入侵，并且据说这种黑客入侵甚至是影响了大选的结果。
Under the stage.
但是我们知道。
I will watch this show with my eyes, and you guys will watch this show through my camera.
但是仍然会遭到这些成功的网络攻击。那么您能分享一下您对于这个国家层面和我们的，或者说更小的一些我们的工作场所，那么它的这个网络安全相关的观点？
So we would like to take US and French election as example. Even that strong firewall has been set up to secure confidentiality at the national level. However, they still suffer from a lot of cyber attacks. So we would like to know your perspective regarding cybersecurity at the national and workplace level.
Well, cybersecurity at a national and workplace level is essentially the same. As Missy was mentioning about firewalls, for example, a social engineering attack works very well, especially for companies that do not have proper egress rules, essentially allowing connections out from the company to the internet, right? So that's typically how an attack like this could happen, is somebody inside falls for a social engineering attack. There's a connection made to what we call a C2 server, command and control, and so the firewall really does nothing to mitigate it. But regardless if it's a nation state or it's a company, a business entity doing business, the threat actors use essentially the same type of attacks. Government, of course, has pretty much unlimited budget to protect their infrastructure, but still, and I could speak to government agencies in the United States, they get compromised all the time, right? And that's because, in a lot of cases, the security industry hasn't solved the problem of malicious code, right? Of how to, antivirus software, which is supposed to really do a job at protecting against malicious code, really is dead these days. It's very easy to bypass any of these products out in the market. So this is a real challenging problem for companies to resolve, is how to ensure that their systems aren't infected with malware. And when you think of malware, people are knowing, oh, okay, that's software. But now we're getting the more sophisticated attacks where we're actually putting implants in firmware, right? What company, not government agency, what company out there that you know of actually examines the firmware of their switches, their firewalls, their routers to ensure that those systems were compromised and an implant placed? Very rare. I mean, we do pen testing all the time. I don't think I've had a client in 14 years ask us to actually validate that the firmware on their devices haven't been tampered with, haven't seen it. So I think that's a direction that a lot of nation-state attackers are using, and now even attackers that want to compromise businesses is not just looking at the software level, but actually looking at hardware as well.
Thank you for your sharing. So right now, can you actually show us how you hack?
I can show you very hacking 101 demos. So the first one deals with physical security. My company was engaged to physically compromise a bank in the United States. And when we did our information reconnaissance, because that's usually the first step a threat actor is going to use against against a government agency or against a company is information reconnaissance, which is really kind of like casing the joint. Well, in this particular case, we identified the bank used certain access control technology, which in that particular case was HID. Here we actually have a HID reader.
Eventually.
HID is an access control technology that's used globally around the world. I don't know about here in China. I haven't really walked around Beijing
set up
to
some
see if
camera
people are
in front of those computers, so maybe
so I'm going to see if there is.
just shoot at the screen.
If they actually have a HID card, if they could volunteer it, because I'd like to use that in this demonstration. Does anybody have a HID card? Are you waving your hand? If you do, can you bring it up? Great. So the first attack on this particular company, there was 2 levels of attack. This bank was in a very large city in the United States. Great. Nice to meet you. Oh, that's your card. Just wait over here for a moment. Okay. So this bank was in a large city. They actually had building security. And to get into the building, you had to have HID credentials. And then each tenant of the building had their own security. And this particular financial institution also used HID. So first I'll explain how we're able to compromise the second step, and then I'll go to the first. The second step is, imagine I'm on the floor of this particular skyscraper of this financial institution. It's during working hours, all right? And to get into any door, you needed a HID credential or you had to follow somebody in, which we did not follow anybody in at the time. But there's always one door on the floor that you don't need a HID credential for. What is it? The restroom, right? So the second part of this attack is when somebody entered the restroom. I was hiding out in the stall area, and when someone went to go use the urinal, I stood next to them, and with a device, I was able to remotely steal their credentials. Yes, we go to those lengths. You can't even use the restroom without fear that your credentials might get stolen. So how do we do that? Very simply, we use a device, and anybody can pick these up for like $300, $300 US, very cheap. This is called a Proxmark 3, right? And with this device, I could weaponize it. It's already on here. I could weaponize it. It's taking a second to do. And what I could weaponize this to do is essentially read the card remotely and replay the credentials. But there's a downside to this, is I have to be within 1 to 2 inches of the target's HID card. So when you're in a private area, you don't have to do this just in a restroom. You can read the card if somebody's lying in a coffee shop, if they're in a smoking area. If you get close enough to the target's card, you can read it. Now, do you actually hold up this device near somebody in the hopes that you're going to get the credentials? No. It's a little bit suspicious. So what you do is you take this device and you conceal it. So it's in something like this, right? That doesn't look threatening to anybody. You could be in the smoking area, you could be in a restaurant next to somebody, or even in the restroom where I was, and you could steal their creds. Now, what do I mean by creds? Is these proximity cards have a card ID and side ID. If you could put computer number 3 on both screens for me.
Okay.
So here's a reader.
You have the computer screen.
The HID card to the reader. We get the side ID. Well, the format's a 26-bit card. Don't worry about that. We have the side ID of 113, and the card ID is 64038. Those are the only 2 pieces of information with prox HID cards I need to actually clone the card and open the door. So with this attack, I have to be within 2 inches. So I take the young lady's card and just get within 1 inch. It's already read it. And put the card down here. We'll take out the device.
So he's actually exploiting the NFC.
Actually, I did it twice to get close enough. Now, so now with this device, I can replay, and this is the same as having the card. Right? So this device, when I was attacking the financial institution, was pivotal at getting inside the data center. But I know what a lot of you are thinking. You know, I'm not going to let anybody get that close to me. But that's okay. We have other types of technologies we could use to steal credentials. We have this device. I'll play with this camera. We can take a look at this. And what this device will do, this is a HID R90 reader. These will read a card from 3 feet away. I have a display at the front. I have a Bluetooth module, and I actually have an implant, a hardware implant, so I can connect to the HID device using Wi-Fi, and any of the credentials that are passed will be captured over Wi-Fi or sent to me via Bluetooth. So I took this to the RSA security conference in San Francisco last year, walked through the vendor area, and was able to read 158 cards. So if we could get this on camera, can we put the camera up? I'll try to focus on this.
Camera focus.
There we go. So I just, right here, so we have the facility and the card ID. It flashed up very quickly. I'll do it again. Right? And this device will read the card from 3 feet away. All right? So, no longer do we need to use such devices as the Prox Mark III. So, at that particular point, I was able to get into the bank's data center. But how was I able to first breach the building in the first place? Right? Used a different method. So, I set up an appointment with the building's leasing department under the pretext, this was a social engineering attack, to lease office space in the same building as the bank target. And then the next day, I showed up in my suit, had my daily planner, and I had a young lady take me around to different empty office suites in the building under the pretext that I wanted to lease one of them. And as she's taking me around, I'm negotiating how much is it for a 5-year lease? How much is it for a 10-year lease? How much funds do we get to improve the property? You know, stuff, I just wanted to get her, you know, her mind not thinking about security. And she was always wearing a HID card on her hip. And eventually, I decided to ask her the magic question. I asked her, how many keys do we get to the offices? Because I have about 50 employees, and I want to make sure I get at least, you know, 50 keys. And the young lady goes, oh, we don't give you keys, we use these cards. And I go, cards, really? I said, and she had it in her belt. I go, can I see what that looks like? And she hands it over to me. I take a look at it, I hand it back, I thank her very much. What she didn't realize is I had a HID device within this daily planner. So I was able to steal her credentials. And her credentials allowed me access to the entire building, not to individual suites. That I had to do by hiding out the restroom to steal those credentials, but to the building itself, to every floor. I could go to the freight elevator and access any floor, or go by the front desk security guard anytime because I have a HID credential. But with this daily planner, what's cool is that, you can have this back, but stay here a second. With this device, it's cool because we could see her card number is 64038, and here's another card, right? This is blank. Nothing, doesn't work. With this device, I could simply, with the push of a button, clone the card. So now this blank card, now becomes her card. So now with this card, I had access to the entire building. Then I hid out in the restroom, was able to steal a bank employee's credentials, and then was able to get into the data center by simply exploiting very common, this is very well-known stuff, but simply by exploiting the ability to steal Prox credentials. So where's that lady on stage? So in case you ever lose that card, here's your backup. You can have it as a backup, so there you go. So that's basically one of the methodologies that we use when we're doing physical pen testing, is exploit access card control technologies to steal it from the victims and use it and leverage it to break into the building.
大家听明白了吗？ 那个，因为之前呢，就是我们也没有想到，就是因为在一般我们这个概念当中，认为这个搞技术的人其实不太善于言辞的。但刚才跟大家看到这个凯文了吧？这个讲的这个我都插不上话，是吧？
He said he don't have time to interrupt.
那么在刚才这个演示当中，大家看到了，就是那么凯文讲了，他们
I don't know if there's more to come, so maybe bear with us for a little while. If I confirm there's nothing more coming, we will just cut the show.
这个可能也从另外一个角度回答了刚才我们说的问题：为什么它能够100%的实现这种渗透测试的成功？那么它的这个渗透测试可能不只是我们坐在电脑前的这样一个渗透测试。
You see, that's how he get the 100% success rate to get into a company building.
光练不说是啥把式。那么今天呢，我们把凯文请到这里来呢，就是大家刚才也看到了，那么我们是既要练既要练又要说的。那么接下来呢，咱们继续往下练啊。
Cool, there's more to come.
刚才凯文向我们展示了如何去入侵到一个物理的位置。
So previously, Kevin showed us how to breach a company building.
那么接下来，
So now, next,
进入到一个公司里面。
demonstrate after getting into the company building what he would do.
因为一般来说，电脑都会有密码保护，对不对？那么接下来呢，我想去问一下凯文这个问题。
So once you get inside company's facility, how would you compromise the company?
Okay, here's the main dish.
Password protected.
Right.
So how do you crack the code?
Right. So once we get into a bank, like we did by exploiting the ability to clone hit cards, how do we get to access the technology, at least of users inside the company, because either their computers are turned off in the evening hours, or they're in screensaver mode. Essentially, you still have to put in a credential because the laptop or the user's desktop has locked. Right? Well, security researchers always think of clever ways to exploit technology. So in this particular case, we're going to use Mac OS X. I have a Mac Air that we're going to do this with in a moment. And what we're going to do is we're going to be able to extract the File Vault 2 recovery key, which is the same as the user's credential. So File Vault 2 is a technology that Apple developed to basically encrypt the drive. And because people are usually lazy, the File Vault 2 key is the same as their login credential 99% of the time. So Apple in the past has already mitigated certain types of attacks with FireWire, Thunderbolt, and other types of technology that you can connect to the actual physical machine itself. And recently, within several months, I think several months ago, a security researcher had figured out that he could use a PCI Express card to essentially redirect memory. So he wrote a POC, a proof of concept. So essentially what we could do with this proof of concept is we could use a PCI Express card and during the reboot process, steal memory, analyze the memory for password candidates, recover the File Vault 2 key, which is the same as the user's password. So this is the type of techniques we'll actually use in a pen test. So let me show you this device.
Oh God, he's gonna show us how to break Apple's File Vault.
So this device, it's always difficult to carry this, especially when you're going to the airport, because you don't leave this on the tray. It's very suspicious, right? So what is this? All this is it's a board that was developed in Taiwan. It's basically a PCI Express that goes into a Thunderbolt adapter, and this I connect to the target machine, this I connect to a Windows box running some software, and then I also have to flash the hardware on this device to do this type of attack. So let me show you how it works. So let's say we have a MacBook Air. I wonder if we could show this on camera. Second.
Okay, now he's gonna hack this MacBook Air
If we could
to
put
get
the
into the
computer
file
on those
system,
screens in a second, but
to
if
bypass
you could put the camera up
the
there,
password
so we
and
can
get
see
into
that
the
this is
file
logged
system.
out. So this is waiting. So it's basically user Kevin,
Okay,
the
password
logged out
protected
machine.
MacBook
So what we're
Air.
going to do is we're going to place this over here. That's okay, I just put there, it's easy. Well, okay. So what I'm going to do is plug in the PCI Express device into the Mac, and this is running a Windows tool called PCI Leech. Find a empty USB port here. Great. So I'll enlarge this in 1 second. Let me just bring up the shell. And let me enlarge this so everybody can see it.
Okay, you can see what he's doing.
There we go. I'm just going to run the tool.
Okay.
And then what I have to do
Leech. That's
to
familiar
activate
to
the
me.
attack,
What
I have
about
to
you?
reboot the MacBook Air. So during the root process, then it's going to acquire memory to essentially analyze and get the credential. So let me reboot it. It's a logged out machine. Sometimes this fails. It's not perfect all the time, but we'll see if it's able to recover the key. In that particular case, it wasn't. Because I didn't log in earlier. Let me just do this one more time. Because during the testing, when I was testing this earlier, if you do it, you only get one shot. So once you do it, if you do it again I forgot to reboot it, then I have to log in again. So wait 1 second. Don't you hate when demos fail? So give it 1 second, and then we'll turn on the camera here so you can see that we're logged out. It's logging in. I'm going to shut it down. Okay. Oops. Let's put this in sleep mode. Great. So if we could put on the camera again, we're logged out. So let me go over here. Thank you very much.
He's really doing this in a magic fashion.
Plug it into the target machine. I'm going to rerun the software again. So you never want to fail during a pen test because you only get one shot. Because normally you can't log in with the credentials because that's what we're after. Let's see if this, there it goes.
Oh, complete.
So we're trying to zoom in on that. So if we look over here, we have the password candidate is HTTPS everywhere, which is the login password to the machine. Again, why it failed the first time is when I was at rehearsal testing all this stuff, and I extracted out the memory, I didn't reboot before showing this demonstration. Also, it just would have worked on the first try. So using this type of technique, what we're able to do in the financial institution was actually extract people's credentials to their MacBooks and then use that to compromise the bank. So good technology to compromise the physical security and using techniques like these that are public. This is not zero-day type of information. These techniques are public and they're on GitHub. So anybody could download this and do these types of attacks. And here we go, we get the credential, and it's usually game over for the client. So there you go.
咱们今天应该说，在场的观众还是非常幸运的，就是说我们不但看到了凯文，而且还看到了凯文失败的演示，是吧？当然，最终是成功了，最终成功了。
Okay. It seems like that is all the demonstration we have. Are we going to get away from the center
那么在
stage?
刚才这个演示里面呢，凯文向我们展示了如何通过这个
Okay.
苹果电脑的
And
这个
we will continue shooting.
通过硬件去
We're running out of this place.
当中的密码，就是说
Okay.
如果你用的是这台苹果电脑，然后
You
你
can see here's the people inside the room.
通过硬件的接口，其实是可以把你之前输入过的密码。
Okay, now for conclusion, as you can see just now that Kevin Mitnick has showed us how to hack into a company's building and then continue to hack the company's computer. Okay, That's quite amazing to me. I don't know what about you. If you have more questions to ask about these things, just leave your comment at the comments sections below. We will collect your questions, and we have reserved a one-on-one interview with the guy on the stage. So if you have any questions, leave it to me, and I will ask for you. So that is all we have for now at CGTN Live at National Conference Center about the CSS, the Cybersecurity Summit. Okay, that's everything I have for now. Goodbye.